The term culture originates from the Latin word cultivate. Communities are generally made up of people who share cultural characteristics. These cultural characteristics are defined by various influences, including geographical, spiritual, and agricultural considerations. Certain cultures impose distinct limitations or boundaries that make them unique. The purpose of this program is to introduce you to the most interesting and unique cultures from around the world. In this episode, we will get to know two entirely different sides of today's Africa. First, we will visit the ancient Moroccan city of Fez. Fez has been closely linked to Islam for over 1,000 years. It has retained its medieval character of winding narrow streets with artisanal workshops, bakeries, and coffee houses. After that, we will traverse the African continent south to Zimbabwe. It is a country that abounds in great natural wealth, with a rich history dating back to prehistory. But at the same time, Zimbabwe has struggled mightily for decades in its quest for political stability. Without this essential political stability, the country of Zimbabwe remains incapable of maximizing the natural resources and wealth of its great land, to the detriment of its people. Fez is the oldest and most important of the four Moroccan royal cities. Within the ancient town known as Fez El Bali, there is an ancient quarter known as Medina. Medina is full of swallows and stray cats and has, for the most part, remained unchanged. Fez was first established in 789 AD by Moulay Idris I, but the greater part of the town was built in the 9th century during the reign of his son, Moulay Idris II. Fez has always been a center of education and religion. The people of Fez were considered to be the most educated people in Morocco. Because of this, they are strongly represented in the government as well as in different ministries. The local clerics were given more power than the ruler himself. In the 17th century, the Sultan Moulay Ismail ensured his place in the city's history when he decided to considerably reduce the influence of the clergy. He made the city of Meknes, 60 kilometers from Fez, the capital. The ruler, known for his cruelty and controversial orders, denied Fez its current privileged status and even destroyed part of the city. The situation is not that much better today. Though most of the buildings are supported by scaffolding, the city has been able to retain much of its original characteristics thanks to being left alone. The Medina Quarter has kept its magic and has now been included on the UNESCO National Heritage List. The Medina is marked by a maze of winding, narrow streets which, according to some, make for the largest pedestrian zone in the world. Cars wouldn't stand a chance, and it is even difficult passing on a motorbike. Thus, the main means of transportation is the good old donkey. Hides are transported astride donkeys en route to local tanneries. The work in the tanneries is hard and totally unsuitable for those with a sensitive sense of smell. Even so, the locals consider it a very prestigious, well-paying job. The hours of work are usually from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. After 2 p.m., it is too hot to work. The hide is left to soak in large clay bathtubs for 2 or 3 days. They are immersed in an alkaline solution to shed the hair and soften the hide. The best solution for this purpose is made of lime, pigeon droppings, salt, and cow urine. Needless to say, only the hardcore can withstand the smell. According to Islamic law, only halal hides can be processed, those hides coming from clean animals like goat, sheep, cow, or camel. Once it is thoroughly cleaned and washed, the hide is dyed. Everything is done in the traditional manner, using natural dyes. The red is derived from the flowers of red poppies, the yellow comes from saffron, the blue from indigo, and the brown from henna. The finished hides are placed on terraces and allowed to dry in the sun. From there, they travel to close-by leather workshops for further processing. Fez is a stronghold for artisanal production. Hundreds of small workshops exist in the old Medina, where traditional products are made. The workshops often group together in artisanal houses, usually on the ground floor of medieval buildings known as fondouk. There was a time when fondouks served as inns. The merchants slept in them, but also stored and sold their goods from there. They were also used as stables. Today, hides are dyed on one floor, shoes and clothes are sewn on another, and a little further on, there is a metalsmith manufacturer. The merchandise is supplied to the market and the income is divided fairly. Handicrafts are currently irreplaceable. Handmade sandals are not easily worn out. The sole is usually made from the very hardy camel hide. In Morocco, tea brewed in hand-hammered kettles just seems to taste better, no matter the occasion. It is said that Muslims do three things together: pray at the mosque, bathe in the public spa called the hammam, and bake bread. There are over 100 little bakeries in the Medina. People bring their own dough and have it baked into lovely fresh bread. One might wonder how the bakers recognize who owns which bread. Fortunately, each customer simply signs his bread with his unique signature. Moroccan men love getting together in coffee houses. They drink coffee, indulge in lively gossip, and watch the goings-on. The women go to the market to gossip. At the market, they find anything they may need, from foodstuffs to shoes, clothes, and household items. It is essential to bargain. Each seller will happily argue over every dirham. While the men drink in the coffee houses after a hard day, the women go shopping for a traditional dinner, which is usually tagine, a Moroccan cuisine. The basis of this dish is stewed vegetables and meat. There are hundreds of ways to make tagine. The variant recipes seem endless. Vegetables that can be added include carrots, olives, apricots, sultanas, nuts, dates or prunes, and of course, a blend of oriental spices. When meat is added, it is preferably mutton, beef, or chicken. The meat is stewed very slowly at low temperature so as to become tender. The food is usually prepared within a wide family circle, sometimes with friends. Only the women mind the kitchen. And while the food is cooking, the women discuss all the neighborhood gossip. They also prepare the ceremonial pastilla. Pastilla is a stuffed pie made from fish, other seafood, noodles, and vegetables. The mixture is wrapped in a thin pastry known as warqa, which in Arabic translates to paper.
1200 في شافها شتي اللي جابتش فين شتي الدنا وهذا 1200
To make sure that the pastry holds together well, an egg is blended into the recipe. The egg also makes for a crispy crust. Prawns are placed on top for decoration, and off into the oven it goes. A good meal is traditionally followed by some music. In this case, a family member grabs the traditional musical instrument known as an uda, and they all join in singing. Green tea with mint and sugar is served to help digestion. Naturally, it has been brewed in a hand-hammered kettle. Today's Fez has a modern side to it. At the beginning of the 20th century, the city quarter of Ville-Nouvelle was built by the French general Lyautey. It is in stark contrast with the romantic look of the old Medina. The narrow, winding streets were replaced by wide boulevards alight with neon signs. Even women sip coffee in the cafes. Lovers go to the cinema to watch romantic movies, and the younger generation can be found playing pool in gaming clubs. While the evening's fun is getting started in Ville-Nouvelle, nearby, on a little hill above the Medina, it is time for the day's last call to prayer. This is most likely just how things will remain in the future. Let's now leave the city of two faces bathed in moonlight and start out on a several thousand kilometers journey across the African continent. In the far south lies a country which, sadly, is disturbed by more than just the permanent drone of the renowned Victoria Falls. Few regions on this continent have such immense natural wealth as Matabeland in the western part of Zimbabwe. There are great deposits of gold, coal, and nickel. However, the domestic politics and economy are almost completely dysfunctional. The 30-year dictatorial regime of Robert Mugabe has brought huge damage to the country. Matabeland's population is primarily made up of people called Ndebele, descendants of the Zulu people. Their language has retained the typical lip-smacking attributes of the language of the natives, the bush people known as the San people. Lip-smacking is not the only characteristic that can be traced to these native hunters and collectors. The caves in the Matobo mountain range are decorated with hundreds of mysterious wall paintings depicting hunting scenes, some as old as 10,000 years. Human remains and prehistoric tools dating back 35,000 years were also found in these caves. The Africa of the 21st century is most in need of schools and water. Drinking water is scarce in Matabeland. Often it must be carried several kilometers from the well to the village. During the dry season, when the water sources dry up, harsh times set in for the people, cattle, and wild animals. When the situation becomes grave, the Ndebele people summon the specialist, the rainmaker. But it is impossible to call for rain without the appropriate tools, including the magic staff, a black skirt, and a hat, both made from the skin of a monkey and civet. This sacred ritual takes place in the mysterious cave of the mountain Njelele, where, according to the Ndebele, God resides. Whites are forbidden to participate in the proceedings. In any case, the natives believe that whites have transparent ears and so couldn't hear God's voice. It seems that God has answered the prayer. Or perhaps the rainy season has just begun, just as every year around this time. Sometimes there can be too much water. Zimbabwe shares the unique Victoria Falls with the neighboring Zambia. The local name is far more romantic, Amanza Thunqueo. In the Sindebele language, it means water that falls upward. David Livingstone, who discovered these falls in 1855, proclaimed that even angels must admire such a stunning sight as they fly over it. Halfway to the Indian Ocean, the 1,700-meter wide bed of the Zambezi River suddenly plummets to a depth of 100 meters. During the rainy season, when the water flows through the river at 10,000 cubic meters per second, the water spray rises to a height of half a kilometer. The Kariba Dam was built years ago to stem the flow of the wild rapids of the Zambezi River at the end of the Batoka Gorge. The dam has helped the development of the mining industry as it generates a substantial amount of electrical energy. On the other hand, the dam project has displaced the members of the Tonga tribe, who survived through fishing on the riverbanks. The deep economical crisis is also reflected in the decreasing visitor rates to the local resorts. Mr. Francis is the owner of the only hotel in the town of Mbitsi. He also owns a motor pontoon used to operate sightseeing trips on the Kariba Dam. Today, Mr. Francis is on the way to encounter the most dangerous of African animals, the hippopotamus. The hippo may appear a little clumsy, but it's easily enraged and capable of moving at a considerable speed. Whomever crosses a hippo's path seldom makes it out alive. The bad-tempered pachyderm simply bites the intruder in half. The engine is refusing to start, and the current is bringing the vessel closer to the nervous herd. The pale face of Mr. Francis indicates that he may cancel hippo sighting trips for a while. During the rainy season, it rains non-stop for almost 100 days. The rain has ceased for now. The scorched ground thirstily soaks up the water, and once again, life is stimulated. There is plenty to be done. Drive the cattle out to the pasture, collect firewood, look after the plot of land, and fix the leaking roof. It seems the boys have caught lunch on their way home from school. Such a frog delicacy would cost a small fortune in a French restaurant. The captured frog is cleaned and gutted. It is then cooked on low heat in brine until tender. Zimbabwe also suffers from a lack of food to feed its population. The result is widespread malnutrition, especially in children. It is assumed that insects will play an increasingly more important role in the local diet. Insects are an important source of amino acids, minerals, and chitin. Since the beginning of recorded history, these caterpillars have been part of the local diet. Just as American potatoes saved Europe at the dawn of modern times, American maize has become the staple diet for the Shona people of Zimbabwe. In her clay kitchen, Mrs. Constance is preparing matuto made from sadza corn flour. Matuto is something between puree and overboiled dumplings. Sadza in many different forms is the staple diet of half of Africa. In Zimbabwe, it is considered the national dish. Just add a little oil and spices, and the tasteless, odorless substance is turned into a tasty and filling meal. The villagers from near and far bring their sacks of maize to the motor mill belonging to Mr. Matuto, where his employees turn it into fine flour at the blink of an eye. bringing the flour home is always an adventure, be it on foot, on a bike, or by car. The state of the local roads is dismal. The holes in the road are huge, big enough for a child to fit in. The government has no money for tarmac, and so only earth and gravel are used. The safest means of transportation may well be an ox cart on a small path. The pedestrians must be careful so as not to step in something. But this pile has its purpose too. Great amounts of dung are used as fertilizer, while some is used for fuel, and the insects deal with the rest. And this is the culprit. Not only do they sully the roads, but due to their huge appetites, they also plunder the fields. The 60,000 animals in country can consume up to 300 kilos of feed. The villagers do not benefit from the elephants, so the animals are considered vermin. They only leave desolation in their wake. The current state of poverty in Zimbabwe has given rise to the huge problem of prostitution and the AIDS epidemic that seems to accompany it. Since 1992, the Gweru Women AIDS Prevention Project, or GWAPA, has sought to control prostitution in an attempt to prevent the spread of HIV. GWAPA has about 1,500 members, most of whom are HIV positive. The GWAPA women offer their members a sliver of hope that they can leave the streets by growing and selling vegetables. Another part of the project are the mobile labs that offer on-site HIV testing. Mr. Boden Wudamanu, the health official who operates the mobile lab, arrived to take the blood samples of new members of GWAPA. Mrs. Wishai Mudendi is getting her first ever test for the presence of this deadly virus in her blood. First, Boden helps her fill out a questionnaire and prepare for the test. It is not an HIV test per se. It's just a quick test to check for antibodies that the body produces should the virus be present. When the test shows 2 bars, it indicates that the person is infected. Unfortunately, this is the case of Mrs. Mudendi. Life is not easy in Zimbabwe, but even in the face of tremendous adversity, the impoverished know how to have fun. Traditional music and dancing helps them forget their hardship. The local virtuosos are playing the mabira. This instrument is usually made from the calabash tree, into which a system of 33 lamellas is built. No one in the world can imitate these African rhythms and dance moves. One must be born with these and develop these skills from childhood. We must hope that the future leaders of this country will understand how to give the people the opportunity to utilize the natural wealth and economic power potential of Zimbabwe. Who knows, maybe one of these little dancers will grow up to play a role in this country's future development. In today's program, we have visited the north and the south of Africa. The differences between the city of Fez in Morocco and Zimbabwe's Matabeleland are as huge as the distance between them. In the next episode of Unusual Cultures, we will traverse a distance greater still. Even so, we shall find something in common between the northern European country of Latvia and the Caribbean nation of Cuba, a communist dictatorship. While Latvia has been free from communism for the last 20 years, and things are fast returning to normal, Cuba still remains in the shackles of the absurd rule of the Castro brothers. This dismal fact aside, the fun-loving people of Cuba cherish and carry on in the culture and tradition of their ancestors.